Okay, we're going to begin chapter 4 and 5 over heredity, like the inheritance and variation of traits. So, how is it that you look the way that you do? How do plants pass on traits from one plant to the next? And how inheritance happens. Heredity. This is the passing on of physical or mental characteristics genetically from one generation to another. So, heredity is what you inherit from your parents. It's the passing of traits from parents to offspring. So, you inherit certain things from your parents, like eye color, hair color, all those types of things. But in order for heredity to happen, there has to be some things that go on within the cell because we know that all of our DNA is inside our cells in the nucleus. And so inside our cells, there are processes going on that will enable us to pass on traits from one generation to the next. The cell cycle. The cell cycle begins when a cell is formed, and then it ends when the cell divides. Now, there are two different ways that cells divide for two different reasons. You have binary fission, which just is a simple split. And then you have cytokinesis, which cytokinesis is much more complex, and it's more for cells like for animal and plant cells. Binary fission is more just for bacteria cells. So this is sort of what binary fission would look like. You have your prokaryotic cells, which means they do not have a nucleus, so they're very simple. It's binary fission occurs in bacteria cells. The DNA just has to be copied, and then they're split. So it's pretty quick and easy. All that has to happen here is the DNA is copied into two strands. Then those two strands separate to either sides of the cell, and then the cell wall or the cell membrane begins to grow in between the two and separates it into two cells. Now, cytokinesis is much more complicated. Cytokinesis is the process by which one cell splits into two. The membrane will actually pinch together in the center of the cell to split it into two. Sometimes if it's a plant cell, then the cell wall will begin to grow between the two. But you'll notice that both of these already have a nucleus. So before they can begin to split, something has to happen within the cell to where the cell has two nuclei. That way they can both have genetic material. Remember, as I'm going through the lecture, if I go too fast, you can always stop the video and then go over what you need to, come back to it later, whatever makes it easier for you. You guys have these to study with, to look at, to go back over as needed. Mitosis. This is one type of cell division. Now, it's important that you understand the difference between mitosis and meiosis. Those are two different types of cell division. Mitosis results in two daughter cells. They're two new cells that have the same number and kinds of chromosomes as the original cell. These are typical for tissue growth. So mitosis happens when we just want to grow. There's not like a new offspring being produced. It's just cell division. So think mitosis is totally normal. It's the everyday type of cell division. So here's a look at what happens during mitosis. So first you have prophase, where everything is starting to happen. You can see the organelles. Interphase, all the chromosomes meet in the middle. Metaphase, they line up in the middle. Anaphase, they begin to pull apart. telophase, now there's two separate nucleus, and then cytokinesis is where it starts to grow. Now, one of the ways that I remembered how to tell the difference between all these phases when I was in high school learning the different phases of cell division, I learned it by like a wrestling match. And so, prophase, the professional wrestlers enter the match. Interphase, they enter the ring and they go to the middle to shake hands. Metaphase, they actually shake hands in the middle. Anaphase, Anna comes through with her little sign that says round one, and the wrestlers go to opposite sides of the cell. Then whoever wins has to telephone their mom and tell them that they won. So the pro wrestlers enter the ring, they meet in the middle, Anna splits them up, and then they telephone the winner. Meiosis is a different type of cell division. Now, some people call it meiosis, some call it meiosis. It means the same thing. It's just a matter of how you want to pronounce it. But meiosis is a different type of cell division. This is used when cells want to reproduce, not just for growth, but to produce offspring. And in order for this to happen, then you actually have to split up the number of chromosomes that you have. Because if you don't split them in half, then every generation would double in the number of chromosomes. And we know that that's not what's supposed to happen. So in meiosis cell division, you get 4 daughter cells, and each of them has half the number of chromosomes. So if you started off with 4, then you'd split to 2, and then each of these would have half of the 2. So meiosis is when we are trying to produce gametes or plant spores. It's when you want to reproduce. So mitosis is for everyday tissue cell growth. Meiosis is when you want to reproduce. All living things have chromosomes. They all have DNA. DNA is wound up tight into chromosomes. These chromosomes are the structure of the nucleic acids and proteins that are in the nucleus. Chromosomes are what carry the genetic information. This is basically what we refer to as your genes. When somebody is saying you got certain genes from one parent or the other, they're talking about chromosomes. This is where all of your DNA is composed. Right here is DNA. It's double helix, and it's wound up really tight and very close together and produces the chromosomes. And these are located in the nucleus of the cell. In humans, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. 22 of these are autosomes, which mean that they contribute to everything else about us except for our gender or our sex. There is 1 pair of sex cells, and that's these at the end. You either have an XX or an XY. So that means all humans have a female or an X chromosome. Only males have a Y. So if you're female, you had XX. If you're a male, then you have XY. Mothers can only give an X to all of their offspring. That's why you'll hear some say it's the dad that determines whether it's a boy or a girl. Okay, so for the human genes, we have 23 pairs. That means we have 46 chromosomes. During mitosis, we start off with the 23 pairs, we end with 23 pairs, which is 46 chromosomes. In meiosis, there are no pairs. There's just 23. So in meiosis, it's like they take one of each of these into a cell. Mitosis has all of these. It has all the pairs. Meiosis only has one. I think we're going to go ahead and stop there today. Make sure that you have written all this information down on your notes outline. Do not turn it in yet. You'll wait until after we actually finish the whole section before you turn it in, and I'll tell you when it's due. Hope you guys have a great weekend. Talk to you later.